Well, let's talk about all of this with media lawyer Mark Stevens. A very good afternoon to you, Mark.
Afternoon, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Let's talk first of all about the lawsuit, because you've been in this world for a very, very, very long time. I'm sure being at the defending end and the attacking end of many a lawsuit involving these sort of things. Basically, he wants to sue under American law, under Florida law, doesn't he, against the BBC because for libeling him, for misrepresenting him and damaging his reputation. Question: does he have a reputation to defend?
Well, let's not beat about the bush here. Donald Trump threatening to sue is almost as common as rain in Manchester. I mean, he does love a headline, and $1 billion has a certain ring to it. But the law isn't a campaign rally. To win such a case, you need much more than bombast and bluster. You need evidence and merit. And I think he's got real problems. In America, the program wasn't shown. So in order to found jurisdiction, his lawyers are going to have to show that a lawful copy of the programme was available. Yeah. And it wasn't shown there on BBC iPlayer or anywhere else. Unlawful copies, breach of copyright copies that may go on platforms, don't count. So if he gets over that and says my reputation was damaged, the Americans have the First Amendment, which allows you to libel the president, say wrong things about him, inaccurate things about him, because he's the president. And so as a consequence of that, it's not clear that even under American law, he's got the ability to sue.
Yeah, and he can't use British law, can he? Because there's a statute of limitations of a year. And of course, this was broadcast before the November 24 election. So when in this country,
it's a year, and that finished at midnight on the 27th of October. So he's kind of 2 weeks out of time. In Florida and many other states in America, you can wait 2 to 3 years before a suit.
Yeah.
But you have to show that the Panorama episode was actually broadcast, and it was that lowered his estimation. It lowered him in the estimation of right-thinking people. And I think, putting the wreckage of January the 6th and the taking of the Capitol at the door of Panorama is probably a bit of a stretch.
And that's the thing. There have been numerous court cases in America, and indictments and Senate hearings and the like, which have said very similar things about him inciting the riot. Now, what the BBC did, regardless of what he said, was an outrageous breach of the most basic journalistic ethics and propriety. I mean, I was saying earlier, at my journalism college, you'd have been failed for having done that. And for the head of the BBC to say it was a mistake, and for the head of news to say there is no institutional bias, frankly, is an insult to our intelligence and laughable. It was clearly deliberately done to make it look like he had directly incited the riots. But there have been many who've alleged that anyway in some of the other language he used, and he certainly was enjoying the riots happening. We've got statements from his immediate staff and family members on the day of those riots begging him to go on social media, call for these people to stop. He chose not to do that for a very long time. So there is a big question about whether he'd even win. But when you make a threat, when you're Donald Trump and he threatens to sue just every day with a Y in it, but he has won money from other media organisations in America. Is it likely there will have to be a grovelling apology from Tim Davie, more so than there's already been, and that there'll have to be some money?
Apology, because what the BBC did was wrong.
Yeah.
But the question, and I think many listeners will be surprised at this, the question is not whether the BBC was wrong, but whether, as a consequence of that, somebody in America watched the programme and thought the less of Donald Trump. Yeah. And the issue here, as you rightly say, was those inciting words and phrases. So we fight like hell, we fight, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have your country anymore. Yeah. We won this election and we won it by a landslide. I mean, that sort of false assertion repeated throughout the speech and for the weeks prior, laid the groundwork to convincing supporters that the election result was illegitimate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those kinds of things that caused the damage, not the BBC Panorama. And that's why I think
But again, the BBC was still wrong, and there seems to be this view that, well, it's okay because it's Donald Trump. But, how many other things? Callers this week were saying, how many other things have they been lying about, and they don't seem to think it's a problem? And we know in terms of coverage of Israel, the nonsense coverage, I would say, both things like climate change and also particularly of trans, I think deeply damaging. I mean, the propaganda put to children and, in children's programming and teen programming and the like. Where do you think this all ends? Because we've got the Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy talking about the BBC as a light on the hill. We've got Tim Davie saying that that the broadcast is the very best of society. We've got the outgoing head of news saying there is no institutional bias. When anyone with eyes and ears can tell that they're not the best. They aren't politically neutral. There is an absolute rot at the heart of this organisation. The polls show the trust in the BBC is plummeting every single day they broadcast. Fewer and fewer people are watching. More and more people are refusing to pay their licence fee. You've been in this field for a long time. Where do you think this ends?
I think it ends probably with some significant members of the board being changed.
But they want the Tories off. They want Robbie Gibb off.
Well, I think there's that, but, one of the things that should be a disqualifier is you're a member of any political party. The whole thing about the BBC is that, they're supposed to reflect all of our views and opinions. Yeah. And I sort of take the view that, if the BBC is annoying everybody, then it's probably doing its job right.
No, but that's what they've argued. But it depends. If a Corbynista is claiming that it's a pro-Israel organisation with no evidence whatsoever, that shouldn't be taken as evidence, taken as equally valid as, we decided to pay the child of a Hamas official £1,000 to host a documentary. I mean, these are not the same things. But here's the thing. No one seems to have an issue with, as Peter McCarthy pointed out, James Purnell, a former Labour minister, being a very senior figure at the BBC. No one has a problem, with numerous figures who've worked in senior positions at the BBC who are from the Labour side. But as soon as it's someone who's a Tory, they lose their minds.
Politicians generally
should be out.
Being involved in our national broadcaster. It should be, if you have been a member of a political party, that should be a disqualifier from being on the board.
Okay, here's the thing. BBC. Isn't it better that we know? Because the reality is, I've no idea what Deborah Turness is, whether she's a member of a political party or not, but I'm pretty sure I know how she votes.
Well, that may be right. I think that what we're missing at the BBC is people who believe in strong, robust, independent voices and protection of freedom of expression. And for me, that's the touchstone of the BBC.
So I think Mark is definitely endorsing me as the next Director General of the BBC. Did I hear that right?
I thought you were endorsing me.
Do you know, I would actually. Mark Stevens, so good to talk to you. Thank you so much, media lawyer Mark Stevens.